What is surprisingly still legal in 2019? Civil forfeiture, in which the government can take your assets if you're just suspected of a crime, under the pretense that said assets were related to the crime. Charges may never be filed, but the assets may be kept if you can't definitively prove that the assets were not involved in any crime. You essentially have to prove your assets' innocence in order to get them back. I know it says 2019. But Sweden just recently, 2016, made identity theft illegal. No joke. And in Sweden everyone's SSN, essentially the equivalent of SSN at least, is public information. Usually you just aren't interesting enough for someone to make a lookup on you to find out your SSN. Edit. As someone else pointed out below, we don't have the same type of system like the US. We use YYMMDDXXXX, where the XES are unique to you and your DOB. It isn't the same, but the impact is essentially the same. Telemarketing. On top of political, I got on some list and get 25/week asking if I want to sell my house. Scalping, particularly the large-scale schemes perpetuated by Ticketmaster or artists in an attempt to make a few extra dishonest bucks. MLMs. The big shiny download button, which is really not the download button, and when clicked, takes you to this page which claims that my Mac has been infected by a virus and now I need to download their software to save it. Child pageants. Herbalife. Being an elderly driver. No, I do not mean 85-year-old people who are borderline. In 2019 in the US you could be 107 and bedbound with a still legitimate driver's license. You can't walk, but you can still cruise around in your 2002 Mercury if you want. Child marriage in the US. Internet provider monopolies. Kids using UV tanning beds. Some states in the US. For-profit prisons. 100 years after they finally end, they'll be looked upon with the same horror we look at, say, using children as chimney sweeps. Pugs. Breeding pugs. Those poor animals go through so much pain, literally living is suffering. Overbred, overmutated, there needs to be license or temp breeding ban on them. Pharmaceutical advertisements. Big Pharma charging 10x more for the same medicine in the US than the rest of the world. According to this source, in Calgary, if released from prison, it is required that you are given a handgun with bullets and a horse, so you can ride out of town. Smoking whilst having your kids in your car. I knew a dad who only opened his car window just enough to toss his ashes, and closed them in between cause this wind is bad for my neck. Meanwhile we were dying in the back. While slavery is illegal, there is still a huge amount of things which we buy that are produced by slaves or by people paid a tiny wage, but who are essentially still slaves in all but name. I really wish that there was some kind of law in place to punish the sale of goods produced by slavery, child labor, or workers without adequate pay and adequate rights. Price gouging on life-saving meds. Insulin, EpiPens, cancer drugs, etc. Payday loans. Bestiality is still legal in 10 states. Daddy/daughter purity balls, icky, icky, icky. Campaign bribes, contributions to politicians. Money is speech, yeah no. /s. In Michigan it is technically against the law for a woman to cut her hair without her husband's permission. That when women get surgery they default consent to receiving a full pelvic exam. They have medical students come in and do all the tests. There can be multiple students doing it and they don't even have to tell you they did that. Edit to add. One source talking about it before a relevant procedure and one talking about it before other, irrelevant procedures. Megachurches being untaxed. Edit. My favorite comment reply to this so far. Nothing stops you from going around to these churches and taking the money yourself. So why don't you? Silly people we have in this world. Excessive product packaging. You buy a box of cereal only to find a bag of cereal inside it. Don't even get me started on the fact that it's only half full. Then there's the theft proof, customer proof, plastic clamshell packaging that you have to risk life and limb while trying to open with a razor blade. And then you have the child proof, elderly proof, pill bottles. We have a freaking island of plastic garbage floating in the Pacific Ocean, and what I mentioned above is why. YouTube Rewind. Anti-vaxxers. You can do a lot of shit that's otherwise illegal if you just say that it's religion. Avoid taxes, have your kid undergo medical procedures that they don't need, have your child not undergo medical procedures that they do need, child marriage. Insider trading is legal for members of the U.S. Congress. Paternity fraud. If I tried to steal 18 years of revenue from anyone by any other method I'd be thrown in jail, but a woman can claim a guy is the father of a child, knowing he isn't, and receive a sizable portion of his income for the better part of 2 decades. Child beauty pageants. Smoking/drinking while pregnant. Arranged marriages. Dog shows. Where they keep inbreeding dogs for a certain trait/appearance regardless of the known health issues that causes. I don't own a dog, so not sure how bad it is. Only having 10 minutes with an attorney if you can't afford a lawyer. Using tear gas against enemy combatants, illegal. Using tear gas against your own citizens, totally legal. In some parts of Japan and some other Asian countries the legal age for consent and marriage is 13 years old. Child marriage, can't digest the fact that it's still legal in some places. Squatters' rights. Repeating popular AskReddit questions that have been asked a million times just to farm karma. Sick people still coming to work/school, and when ill people come back, if they choose to stay home, they are mentally ill because of the work they left behind. Why couldn't bosses accept the fact that we are human beings instead of a tool for their successes? SMH. School still starting at 8 in the morning. If you can't park it, you can still buy and drive it. Edit. Cars. If you are unable to park a car/truck/van/semi/panzer/whatever, you shouldn't be driving it. Eminent domain, basically states the government can seize your property as long as they compensate you fairly for it. Except the government decides how much a fair amount is. It's usually used when the government needs to build infrastructure like highways and bridges. Outright lying in politics. Giving farm animals unnatural lives in boxes where they can barely move. Lobbying. Employment discrimination on the basis of gender identity and sexual orientation. According to 30 U.S. states, being queer or trans is a fireable offense. Anti-vaxxers. Child drag shows. People die because they can't afford health care, Nestle. Styrofoam, anything for food service. Child marriage. Particularly in the US even. You would think it would be outlawed by now, but nope, that certainly isn't the case. Especially in the more rural states. I know in some states a toddler as young as 5 can get married with just one parent's consent, or it's in between state lines. Some states usually just need one parent's consent and maybe a judge's approval, but I'm not sure. Child marriage is rampant in the US even to this day. Which is ironic to say the least. And if these kids wanted to divorce, they wouldn't be able to because you have to be 18 to have an attorney. It's disgusting that it's still allowed under the guise of religious freedom. People shit on Saudi Arabia, India, or whatever country for still permitting child marriage, yet here we are, with the exact same problem that I'm sure the most of us don't know, which makes sense but is really sad. And for the reason these marriages still happen? Families want to marry off their daughters as soon as possible, or to save face, i.e., keep their image/pride, or the girl got pregnant and they want to marry her so she doesn't bring shame to the family and the kid isn't born out of wedlock. It still surprises me that such a thing as child marriage is still legal and rampant in the US. Don't shit on someone else's backyard, take a look into your own. In India, there are no laws against marital rape, so it's technically legal to rape your wife/husband. The practice of making a video game, selling it, and then shutting down the servers several years later, making it nearly impossible to play. It's still legal in 31 states within the US to discriminate against homosexuality. Meaning you can fire someone and list the official reason as them being gay. Declawing cats in the United States. Puppy mill's crying face. Declawing cats. Clipping a dog's ears or tail just because it looks nice. They're a living creature. Why harm them? I may be more of a hippie than I realized. Surprised face. Advertising alcoholic beverages to drivers on the road, whether it be on the side of a truck or a billboard indicating that Coors is sold at the next exit, with bottles sticking out of ice and dripping with condensation. If I were an alcoholic, I would be tempted to pull off for a drink. Pretending wineries are any different, as well. Same shit. Free tasting room ahead. UHG. Radio ads and music on the radio featuring honks, sirens, and screeching tires. Not paying taxes if you're rich enough. USA doesn't have ugly pics on packs of smokes, nor does it have the generic number on the cig instead of branding. Fake news. Claiming trans panic as a defense for murder. Technically, pedophilia. As long as you are legally married to the victim. Marrying your siblings, damn it Alabama. Being able to be fired or denied things like housing, based on sexual identity or sexual preference. Not vaccinating your kids. Deliberate false and misleading advertising on a website where most people receive news from, Facebook. Deep fakes. Not vaccinating your goddamn kids. I know, some states and countries are changing that, but it's still legal everywhere else, not to vaccinate.